All right, folks. So I'm working on my Rendezvous, but I hit the brakes. I had to hit the brakes really hard, and then the front wheel on the driver's side locked up, and it hung up. Even after letting off the brakes, it overheated the rotor. It started to ease up a little bit, so I drove it the rest of the way home, I was still a good hour away. It started to free up a little bit, but it was getting hot. But it started raining, so that helped cool it down. But this slide pin was locked in the caliper. I played heck getting this thing out. It took me a good 45 minutes. And I cleaned it all off with the wire brush, but you can see where it's just been eaten away with rust in there, and it's getting kind of thin. So I went ahead and bought a new caliper slide pin. It was like $14 at AutoZone or whatever. I put that in there, and I just lubed and cleaned up all the brakes. The rotors are pretty worn, but they'll last through the remainder of these pads. There's about 50% left on them. Hi, Hannah. How you doing, handbag girl? She's a rescue dog. She was completely emaciated and starving when we found her. But when I had this jacked up anyway to do the brakes, I discovered my wheel bearing was bad. So I got another wheel bearing in today. I'm going to go ahead and replace that. I get these on Amazon. It's like $33 with tax. They want $180 or something for one at AutoZone. It's not worth it. They're the same cheap Chinese junk. But I cleaned all the brakes and did all this. So I reused the rotors, even though they're worn, but they'll be good enough to last till it's time to do the pads, and then I'll put a new set of rotors on it too. I did pad slap these once, so they're kind of worn down. But I'll go ahead and get the car jacked up and show you changing this wheel hub. These are pretty easy to do on these GMs. I do them all the time. I got another one coming at the end of the week to do. It might take you a little longer if you haven't done them a lot, but I've done quite a few of them, so usually takes me less than a half an hour. All right, so we'll go ahead and pull this wheel off. Put those in a magnetic piece. Now, I always take my tire and slide it under here. I do have a jack stand under here already, and it's on the jack, but I'll put the tire right there in case it falls. That will help save you, save your legs, save your whatever, and it'll help you be able to get it jacked back up off of the ground if it falls. So, I'll go ahead and get some tools out here. My air ratchet, or my electric ratchet, my manual ratchet, a 15 and a deep and short, 13 and a deep and short, 10 and a deep and short, and we'll need an 18. And I'll get that in a deep and short too. And I'll get a short extension just in case we need that. And I'll grab a flat tip screwdriver. What we're going to do first is just remove this caliper, which this is a 10 millimeter. Grab that. Yeah, these are brand new sockets. It's the first time I used them. I bought them for my tool cart specifically, so I don't have to keep going back. Oh, that's a 12. I forgot. But usually you don't see 12s on GMs, but you do sometimes. We'll take that out. I'll just put all my bolts in a separate tray there. So you can pull the whole caliper bracket off and just leave the caliper on it. I usually like to do it this way. It's a little faster to do it the other way. Let me get a pair of gloves on so I don't get my hands all, I don't want to get my pretty hands all dirty. Oh, that's not good. Let me get another glove. I've been building some muscles lately, and these gloves are getting tighter. My arms and hands have got bigger muscles in them, I think. Eating the meat. Lots and lots of meat. Lots and lots of fat. Okay. So, now we just have to kind of pry this a little. Pull that caliper in. Oh, come on. Let me get a bigger screwdriver. My little mini pry bar. Really? There it goes. Okay, and I'll just take and hang this up around here. And yes, I hang them by the brake hose. It's my own car. If it was a customer's car, I probably wouldn't. Okay, so now we got to pull this caliper bracket off. There's two 18 milli bolts back there. These are going to be tight, so we're going to start them. Is this an 18? Yes. Okay, those are 15s. There's two 15 millimeter bolts back there. And switch direction. There we go. And we'll get this one broke loose. There we go. And now I'll go ahead and put that on my electric ratchet. Take that bracket off. Oh, I forgot to get my socket for my axle, so let me go get my axle nut socket, then we'll take this axle out. Alright, so this is a 33 millimeter. Take that off. Then I'm just gonna tap on this a little bit, make sure it's loose. If you have to hit it really hard with the big hammer, you want to put this nut back on to make it flush so that you won't beat up your threads accidentally. And if you really got to get after it, then an air hammer with a chisel bit right in the center of it is the way to go. But this one's not hung up, so it's moving just fine. You can see that. So now we just got to get back in here. There's 3 bolts back behind here. I can't really show them to you, but there's 3 bolts. There's one here, and one clear back here behind this wheel speed sensor. If I remember right on these, you got to take this little sensor housing off first. This is a sensor that I replaced or repaired with some wires because the wires broke. So I have to see what I did there exactly. I probably need my cutters. As I see, I have a zip tie on it here. We'll take that zip tie off. Let me get some light down here. Help you guys see a little better maybe what I'm doing. But yeah, so Now I think we have to take this little sensor housing out, and the best way to do that is with a pair of side cuts and just squeeze those side tabs and stick them back through there like so, and that comes out. And now we'll have to disconnect this sensor, and you can see where I repaired the wiring on this before, because the wheel hub wasn't bad then and I just had a broken wire, so I fixed it. This has, let me look, I think it's got a 13 millimeter bolt, and then the 13 milli comes, the bolt, it's got a nut. It's got a bolt with a little extension on it with a nut. So you have to take that nut off, then this little thing falls off, and then you can get to the main one. So just grab our 13 millimeter. See if we can take that off. It's gonna need a deep. I know I got the 13 milli deep out. Yeah, there it is. And so we get back here, get to the nut. We'll get the electric. There's the nut. And this comes off, and then there's the bolt behind that is 13 millimeter too. So now for breaking these loose, I'll have to use my ratchet. This ratchet is a Carlisle. It has a really small head. Carlisle doesn't sell this style anymore. They have a big giant head one that won't reach. So having a small head on your ratchet really helps to get to these. Ooh, too tight. And a lot of times it'll help if you just spray the threads here that are sticking out with a little WD-40. They'll come out a whole lot easier. Okay, that one's loose enough. Now this one right here is really hard to get to because the axle is right in the way. So a lot of times you gotta use a little extension to get that back far enough to get on the bolt and get the ratchet on here, and then you can twist them. That one's not too bad. And then we'll take that off and put this back on, and then we'll go after this one. If I can get on it. Yeah. Okay. That one out. That one out. And we have to take this one out. So you can see how that one has that little stud that 13 millimeter nut goes on. So now we'll just pull it out. Sometimes these don't come out that easy. Sometimes you got a hammer on them. But this one is not seized. And it looks like it's been worked on before. You have this piece here. It will go back on this way so that it helps cover the ball joint down here at the bottom. So just remember the way that goes. It does not come out with the thing out here. It doesn't go up here. It goes down towards the bottom. Okay. And then we want to just clean this up. You can use a wire brush or whatever you have. I'm going to use my zippy disc. And yeah, I mean, you don't really have to do this part, but this is what keeps your wheel perfectly in alignment. So you want this to be pretty clean and dead on. So now I just there goes the air compressor. Alright, I'll be back once the air compressor shuts off. Alright, so the air compressor is finally shut off. So, I just cleaned up the surface of that, and I went around the inside just to knock off the high spots and make sure there's plenty of room there. So when we slide the new hub in, it goes nice and free. If this is really corroded up and you had to hammer on it to get it out, I have a carbide bit that I can fit on my drill, and I'll just go around that really lightly. But this one isn't that bad, so just using the zip disc was good enough. So what I'll do is just take some WD-40 and just kind of spray these splines on the axle down so they slide in there nice and neat. Let me move my 7-Up. 7-Up with WD-40 doesn't taste so good. And then I'll put some grease back on here too. Alright, now the other thing I'm going to want to clean off is this right here. So let me get my zip disc and clean this off just a little bit. Clean off the other side. And we just kind of knock off all the high spots. And this is actually bent right here. Interesting, but it's pretty good in the spot. But somebody, what that's from is somebody's replaced the hub in this before. It wasn't me. On this side, I replaced the one on the other side. But they had to stick a screwdriver in there to try to pry the hub out. And you're better off just to hammer on the hub. But that's what they tried to do. Luckily, they didn't scar it up too bad. But yeah, a lot of mechanics that aren't real experienced doing these will do that. On an Equinox though, man, sometimes those get really seized in here. I've had to hammer on them for a couple of hours to get them to come out. But these with the plastic on this back part don't get seized in there that bad. But the Equinoxes is all steel. And those can be a real pain. So we'll get our new one out. Get it out of the bag. And we got our wheel speed sensor here. We'll get that unhooked. And we have to look and see if this is the style that it takes. It's not. It took the plastic style, which this does not come with. A lot of times they won't come with the right one. So if that's the case, you just gotta take the old plastic one off and move it over to this one. But the plugs are the same. It's just some cars use this flat one to go in, and you could probably slide this down on that bracket and make it work. I just rather go ahead and change that out. So we just have to pry that up, slide it back, and then this one, it comes off. We're just going back here, pry up on that. And then slide it back. And then this one, we'll just go right in here and slide forward and lock in. So that makes sure it's held right. This one is shorter, but you know, when I did the wiring on this one, I did the wiring repair, I just had to solder on extra wire to make the length because I didn't want to take it out. And so now you're just going to make sure your wire goes across the bottom. But first you're going to remember to put this on. Right? Then you're going to take and slide your wire through. Like so. Going under the axle. Then you want that wire to be towards the bottom corner. So it's like that. And it'll go in there. And then we'll just put one of our bolts back in. Here, I usually start with this bottom corner one. It's the easiest one to get to. And we'll just squeeze that up. We'll put that on. We'll get our ratchet and we'll kind of just tighten it in there a little bit. Oh, let me put it on tighten. And we might need to loosen that just a little bit to get the other ones lined up. And then we'll get our other bolt right here that goes in the top one. It helps if you push that axle back a little bit. It helps you get hooked onto it there. And we'll put our extension on. Get it started and put our ratchet on. Switch that back to tighten. We'll put that one in. And now we gotta put this one in. This is the hard one. Usually they really get to. We're gonna take our extension off. There we go. Now this will come up here. Your other wire is hanging out back here. Right, and those two will go together, but you got to put your bracket back on there first. So first thing we want to do is tighten that down really good with a hand wrench. Get it on there. Have to feel where it goes on. Okay, there we go. So there we go. Now we'll put our bracket back on, which goes in here like so. I'm going to put our nut on. Go ahead and get our electric ratchet. To go in the bottom. I don't know. Let's go ahead and hook them together and see how they'll fit. We'll go ahead and put them together here. Okay, well now we're together. Yeah, go to the bottom of that bracket. That gives us enough play in it. That's good. So now we just have to tighten this bracket. Now, I don't know if I have enough room to get back here to it. We'll see. This bolt. Yeah. So let me take that out again. Now let me tighten the bolt where that connector is not in the way. We'll bring that up. We'll put this on. Make sure it's on there good and tight. Give it a shake. You don't want that to come loose and get wrapped around your axle. That's in there good. Okay, now we just gotta tighten the rest of our bolts. So this one we're gonna need the extension for. And yeah, you're supposed to torque this stuff down. It's my own vehicle, so I'm not worried about it. If it was a customer's vehicle, I would get the torque wrench out. You know, I only paid $200 for this vehicle like almost 4 years ago, so it's okay. Okay. Now I'll put my wheel nut back on. Yes, you're supposed to torque this. I find that setting 2 on my DeWalt Impact is nearly perfect. And you just see them run until it stops turning. Setting 3 on that, you know, this is a big impact. It'll put it too tight and then you'll have premature bearing failure. You can look up the torque spec and get a torque wrench out. Torque that, you probably should, but you know, I don't. But now we just gotta put the brake caliper bracket back on. After we put the rotor on. So now we gotta put the rotor back on. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and just clean the rust out of this because I didn't do it when I did the brakes because I knew I'd be doing this. But I always clean the rust out of the rotor hat here. Alright, so let me let the air compressor stop running again. Alright, so the air compressor shut off again. So what I normally do is I put a little bit of brake grease on here. Ceramic is preferred now. I've had problems with this Permatex brake grease kind of getting hard after a few years. But I don't have any ceramic right now, so I'm just going to use some of this. And we'll put that on there, and then we'll just wipe it on just to help keep this from getting rust under it and rust jacking, and it helps keep things, you know, nice and straight. Now if you're putting a used hub in or you have your wheel off, I usually just clean this up, the rust off of it with the Wizzy wheel, and then I have a special thing that goes on my air drill that I put down here, and it cleans around the studs. Just to get most of the rust off and keep that even. Now we'll put our rotor back on. And now it'll always tilt like this unless if you have the one with the hole in it for the screw that's in the hub and you want to put that on, you can. I typically don't put those screws back in if I find them. They're optional. They're just done for assembly of the vehicle. We'll go ahead and get some brake clean and clean this rotor off just a little bit. Make sure it's not all greasy. Oh, there goes my light, it died. But now we got this on. Now we're ready to put our caliper bracket back on. We just take our bolts, put those in. Our other bolt, put it in. Now I'll grab my 15. I'll go ahead and get him with this first. Then we'll take our hand tool ratchet. Oh, my light came back on. Let's get those good and tight. Yeah, there's a torque spec for those too. I never torque those though. Put our pads back in here. There's still plenty of lube on them. Put our brake caliper back on. Oh, put our pad back in that fell out. Maybe. I think I just gotta loosen it up a little more. I'll see. I need to just go get my C-clamp. There it goes. Okay. Then we put our two 12mm bolts back in here. And put those in. We'll make sure those are tight. Now, I always just take an extension and my 15 and go back over these caliper bracket bolts and give them a double check. Make sure they're tight. Every time I have that caliper bracket off, I check that. And then I'll just double check the caliper bolts. Make sure they're tight. And there we go. We are ready to put the wheel back on and drive. So that's how you do it, everything except for the torque specs, which you can look up and certainly do those. I just didn't. So, but now we're ready to drive, and we won't have a wobbly wheel. So that's how you tell when you jack it up and you have the wheel loose. I should have showed you that. It wobbles, and you can tell there shouldn't be any play in this, and there's a little bit of play. So sometimes I don't make noise, sometimes I do make noise, sometimes they make noise but they don't wobble, sometimes they wobble. Usually people complain about it making noise, but I've also just come across a fair number of them that won't make any noise but they're loose. So, and that's this way this one was. It wasn't making any noise. When I did the brakes, I checked the wheel and it wobbled, so I knew it needed done. Alright, I'll talk to y'all later. This is Tom, your Frugal Prepper.